Pretty good. Doing pretty good. How are you? All right. All right. We like to hear that. We like to hear that. Yeah.
All right.
Nice and warm out there, I tell you. Man.
Oh,
Oh, right. All right. All right. Good afternoon, everyone. Good afternoon. It is Dr. Brown yet again, another episode of Health Facts by WVOE and PressureMD Academy. Glad to thank you for tuning in. Thank you for being locked into WVOE, the voice of Ebony, where your health is our heartbeat. So I'm Dr. Christopher Brown, president and founder for PressureMD Academy, welcoming you to another enriching session of Health Facts, the show where wisdom meets wellness and knowledge is always in season. Okay. All right. So the last time we chatted, I think we talked a little bit about Minority Mental Health Month. Then last week, I do apologize. So sometimes clinical duty calls, and so I wasn't able to chime in last week, but we're back again this week to talk a little bit about some health facts and hopefully give you something that you can really walk away and utilize help to better your health. So today we're going to talk a little bit about you may have heard in the news that the actor Malcolm Jamal Warner, probably best known for his role Theo on the Cosby Show, passed away from a drowning incident. He was in the ocean, and according to the news, he drowned. And from what we've seen so far, like I said, yet again from the news media, looks like he was in the ocean, and they think he got caught up in what they call a rip current, and wasn't able to come out of that, and he drowned. So we're going to talk a little bit today about water safety and why water safety is important. So we're going to cover it a little bit today, talk a little bit about, what may have happened, or what they're speculating happened in the news, and why, we need to really be cognizant of safety when we're around bodies of water. And that's, there's oceans, of course, there's lakes, rivers, and even pools. So I think those things are important. First and foremost, let's talk a little bit about drowning. Okay, drowning. What happens with drowning? Okay, so drowning. Yet again, I feel like we use this term a lot, but honestly, it really is accurate for so many things that affect our bodies. And drowning is called a silent killer. Okay. And the reason they call it silent killer is because it happens quickly, it happens quietly, and many times without a splash or a cry for help. Okay. So a lot of times, I think the mental picture people get with drowning is, somebody in the water splashing, and that's what they think is drowning. The truth is that if that person is splashing and screaming, they're not actually drowning. They're about to drown, but they're not actually drowning at that time. Once that water fills, once that person's in the water, that person is no longer able to cry for help. And this stuff can happen really, really, really quickly. Okay, so we have to keep that in mind. That, like I said, the typical image that you have is really not, is not probably not an accurate one whenever it comes to this. Okay, um, so when it comes to kind of drowning, what sort of statistics do we have? Okay, so according to the CDC, drowning is a leading cause of unintentional injury and death nationwide. But like a lot of things, the risk is not shared equally. Black individuals are 1.5 times more likely to die from drowning than white individuals. And then the disparity really is shocking for children. Black children ages 5 to 9 are two and a half, almost 2.6 times more likely to drown in a swimming pool than white children. And for Black children aged 10 to 14, the the drowning death rate in any body of water is 3.6 times higher. So even more, that disparity is even wider. Okay. Overall, men and boys account for nearly 80% of all drowning deaths. And kind of like I said, these are, I know we're talking stats, but these aren't just numbers. These are, whether it's your father, your son, your brother, nephews, your daughters, friends, this becomes very real. And I'll disclose, a story of mine. I mean, I actually had a family member that actually drowned during a family engagement, and he was young. He was probably about like 5 to 6 years old at that, somewhere around that age. And everybody was gathered. It was at a place that had bodies of water. He kind of slipped away from everybody, unbeknownst to anyone. And when he was found, like he was already drowned. So like this stuff, it is a real danger there. Okay. So what are the biggest dangers you face in anytime you're around a body of water? Um, so uh, so there's drowning. Most obvious, of course. It can happen in seconds. It's often, and like I said, often silence. Um, it especially weak swimmers who get in over the head, or like kind of like our incident where it's an unsupervised child, or a child that slipped away from supervision, who can kind of fall into a pool. Maybe they're looking for something in nature. Okay, so that is probably the biggest one. Rip currents. And so this is a big one for anyone who loves the beach. Okay. And what a rip current is a powerful but very narrow channel of water moving away from the shore. So of course everybody thinks about the waves coming to the shore and things coming back. Well, for whatever reason, this body this water is coming back, but it's coming back in a narrow channel. So, like I said, this is some people know how to actually spot it. It's a narrow channel, and it's moving away from the shore back to the ocean. So imagine you're out there, kind of in some water, maybe chest deep or something in nature. You get caught in this. So what happens is that people panic, and when they panic, they try to swim directly against it, trying to get back to shore. But that's actually the wrong thing to do, because it's the ocean. It's a lot more powerful than you. So most people try to swim, back in the direction of the shore, and unfortunately, that often will lead to a person getting exhausted, and if they get too exhausted, they can actually be pulled under, and that's actually what happened to Mr. Jamal. Okay, so Malcolm Jamal warning. So that's what they're speculating, is that he got caught up in a rip current. So that's it. Um, the other things that can happen around bodies of water, especially pools, is slips, trips, and falls. So there's wet surfaces around there, whether you're a pool, whether you're on a dock, or even if you're at a river rocks, that can be extremely hazardous. So if you slip, you can get a head injury, broken bones, and fall into the water unexpectedly. Maybe that injury, like I said, if it's a hand or a leg, it makes it a lot harder to swim. So you got that going on there. Then there's boating accidents. This can be caused by operator inexperience, not paying attention, or the other thing is alcohol use. So you're drinking, you're on the boat, and you're operating improperly. Also, not wearing life jackets. A lot of times people feel like, oh, well, I can swim, or I'm not going to fall out of the boat, and you do. And if you don't have a life jacket, it can be a fatal mistake, because especially if it's some sort of accident, maybe somebody's fooling around, you fall out, maybe you hit your head on the way out of the boat. If you are minimally conscious or unconscious, if you have a life jacket, the life jacket actually saves you. Okay, the life jacket can actually save you while somebody comes to treat you. But if you do this and you don't have one, like I said, this could be a fatal mistake there. Okay, um, and what can then there's another thing called shallow water blackout. This is something that is actually kind of new to me, because actually I was looking this stuff up, but kind of found this, and it's when someone kind of hyperventilates before going underwater, because they're trying to see how long they can hold their breath. You can actually deplete your body's carbon dioxide, and which is a signal that tells your brain you need to breathe. And without that signal, you can pass out underwater. And so that's another thing that that can happen as well. It's called shallow water blackout. So these are some of the most common things, or some of the more common things that can happen for people that go around bodies of water. There are other things that can go on. Diving injuries, of course, if you jump off and it's more narrow than the body of water is more narrow than it needs to be. A lot of times, there will be warnings, but like I said, there may be an incident where there's not a warning there. Like I said, these are top 5 water related incidents. So of course the thing, we always talk about, hey, yeah, once I give you the information, like, all right, well, how do we prevent this from happening? Okay. So one of the first things to know is to never swim alone. You always want to use a buddy system. You always want to make sure that whenever you are going swimming, that somebody knows where you are. Do not go swimming alone. Now, even if you're a strong swimmer, don't go swimming alone, especially in the ocean, because, like I said, those rip currents are they get even strong, experienced swimmers. So never swim alone. Next, supervise children actively. It means you have to keep an eye on kids all the time, and you really need it. So especially if you got a party going on, something of that nature with kids around, somebody needs to be a designated water watcher, and it's basically a lifeguard. I mean, you're almost a lifeguard, but I mean, what's the role of lifeguard? Kind of look. That lifeguard is trained to kind of look for signs of somebody drowning, and so like I said, even if you're at a local pool, or like I said, you got a pool in your backyard, you got a number of people there, you need a designated water watcher. And that person's job is to watch, see who's out there, watch the water, make sure there's nobody in there drowning. So make sure you got that going on. So supervise those children actively. And even once you bring them out, like I said, make sure you bring them out, and there should be a gate around it. If there's a gate, make sure that gate is locked. And make sure you hold the kids accountable. So in our incident, the kid, my family member came out and then somehow slipped back in. So you want to keep that eye out anytime there's a body of water. Okay. It's in another thing that's a safety point, and kind of indicated it a little bit when we're talking about the rip currents. So if you ever caught into a rip current, I know this has got to be, people gonna tell you this advice, but one of the things you cannot do in a rip current is panic. Okay, and you got to get your. And actually, this is for a lot of things with water related. Okay, most of our bodies actually are fairly buoyant. We usually have enough, fat basically, that we will actually float, but only if we relax. Okay, so whether you're out, maybe you jumped into or got pushed into a pool, and it's you're not the best swimmer or whatever, or like I said, you're getting caught into a rip current. Do not panic. Okay, do not panic. Get control of yourself. Okay, because what you can do is that if you actually relax, most of the time your body will float enough, at least for your head to be above the water. And that's all you need. All you need above water is the head. As long as your head is above water, you can breathe, you're good to go. And the ocean is even more important, because guess what? You have actually more buoyancy inside the ocean. So your body will actually naturally float there. So do not panic. Okay, don't panic. Do not swim against, and this is going to be counterintuitive. Do not swim against the rip current. Okay, you want to because you can't. That water is rushing in. You can't swim stronger than that water. Okay, so what you want to do is you want to swim what they call parallel to shore. So it might be kind of hard to show this online, but so if there's if you got the beach, maybe I should get an example there. So if you got a beach here, okay, and you're coming from the beach into the water, so you don't want to try to swim back in. You actually want to swim kind of at parallel, kind of at the same angle as the beach itself. And what's happening is this, and that is the body of water is coming just in a narrow angle. It's pushing you out. But if you swim, kind of in the other direction, and God, this is not showing up on Zoom well at all. If you swim in the direction of the shoreline, at some point in time, you should swim out. You will swim out of the way of the rip current, and then it'll go back to normal. But this requires you to, number one, recognize you're in a rip current. Number two, to relax, do not panic, just kind of go with it. And then number three, to kind of swim, parallel to shore to try to get yourself out of it. So, so that's what's necessary for a rip current, to try to get yourself out of that. So make sure you try to keep your head, reasonably grounded. Don't panic, even though it's going to be hard. It's going to be hard. Try not to panic so that you can swim your way out of it. And there's a technique called flip, float, and follow. Okay, and this is you try to remember this. And what it is you flip on your back. Okay, and when you flip on your back, you're going to float, and you're floating. And what you're doing, so when you flip on your back, you can breathe. When you're floating, you're conserving your energy. Okay, and you can actually let the current carry you until it dissipates, then swim back to shore at a different angle. So that's another method. And honestly, if you're not experienced, that may be the easier one to do, is to flip on your back, float, and then follow. Okay, you're gonna carry me out. Okay, then I'm gonna swim out, and then I'm gonna try and make my way back to shore. Okay. Fourth thing you want to do, wear a life jacket. Okay, if you're on a boat, everyone on that boat should have a life jacket. Okay, so, and if you're weak weak swimmers children, it's a must-have, not a nice-to-have. You need a U.S. Coast Guard approved life jacket. Anybody that's a weak swimmer and anybody that's a child, that's needed. I don't care if your child took one course in swimming or whatever, but like I said, this is gonna be different if they fall out of a boat. So honestly, everyone on there should have one, but weak swimmers and children, don't even let it on your boat if they don't have one. Okay, so make sure you're wearing a life jacket. And then avoiding alcohol. If you're in boats and stuff of the nature or something of the nature, you want to avoid alcohol. It impairs your judgment, balance, coordination, and it makes it more likely that accidents will happen. Okay, so you have to try to avoid alcohol when you're around things like that. So those are, so like I said, so kind of recapping, the big things, big dangers around water, bodies of water are going to be drowning, rip currents, slips, trips, falls, boating accidents, and then like I said, stuff like shallow water blackouts or different diving injuries are going to be the big ones. The ways to prevent these: never swim alone. If you got children, make sure they are actively supervised. Number three, if you're in a rip current, don't fight the rip current. Either swim parallel to shore or you want to flip, float, and follow. Then wear a life jacket and then avoid alcohol. Okay. So that's kind of the main message. Now we've got a couple of messages that we want to kind of touch on. One of the biggest message is around children. Okay. And kind of like we said, and especially I want to reach out to, Black folks, because, we said the statistics of, how much more common it is for us to drown than white people. And one of the reasons, because a lot of us, we're not taught to swim, and especially not swimming at an early age. So one of the most effective tools for preventing drowning is teaching children how to swim. Okay. So formal swimming lessons, I'm gonna give you the stats, okay? Formal swimming lessons can reduce the risk of drowning amongst children aged 1 to 4 by as much as 88%, okay? 88%. Formal swimming lessons can reduce the risk of drowning among children aged 1 to 4 by as much as 88%. Okay. So giving your child swimming lessons isn't just some sort of summer activity. It is a life-saving skill that will protect them their entire life. And it's one of the greatest gifts you can give them. Okay. So you want to check with your local YMCA, Parks and Recreation, and just look, go to Google and look up, swimming lessons for children. I have a grandson. My grandson, my daughter, and son-in-law. You know, when he was an infant, they had him in a pool learning to swim and floating and stuff of this nature. So, and I super applaud them for doing this. I mean, I really applaud them for doing this. But I'm going to say this one more time: formal swimming lessons. Formal swimming lessons. I just kind of been fooling around. Formal swimming lessons can reduce the risk of drowning among children aged 1 to 4 by as much as 88%. So you want to make sure that you get this. So get this for your kid. Don't wait. Don't wait until they're 5, 6, 7 years old. Get them when they're babies. You know, when they still got Pampers on. You want to go get this child. You want to get your child some swimming lessons, especially in it kind of in general, but especially if you're around bodies of water, you plan on being bodies of water, you plan on vacationing at the beach, you go to the lake, you say you have plans on sending your kids in the pool. Do not underestimate these young, and do not underestimate the ability of young people to slip into pools and drown. I mean, if you have your children, you should know already they slip away all the time. You know, like I said, once they're mobile, they're hard to keep up with. And as we saw with the statistics, more men than women. Why more women, more boys and girls? Why? Because them boys. Anybody's got a boy knows that them boys do not sit still. Okay, at some point in time, they just challenge. They're going to challenge whatever rules, regulations, or barriers that you give to them. So get your child some swimming lessons. And then, okay, so that's one. So get your swimming lesson. Number two, basic life support, what we call CPR. Okay. You want to go learn that. Everybody should have a family member that knows basic life support. Honestly, all the family members need to just know some basic life support. Basic CPR. Why? Because it saves lives. And the incident, like I said, when my family member drowned, of course I was there, and I instituted, basic life support. This was enough to get him back to breathing on his own and to minimize the chance of basically brain damage. Because what happens if you drown, if you don't get that person breathing soon, like I said, they won't have oxygen and they will suffer brain damage. Okay. And so we were able to get him resuscitated, get him to a hospital. And like I said, they watched him. And like I said, didn't really have any issues after that. But you want to make sure but that's because someone there knew basic life support. So that's another class that you can take. They're going to be low cost. I don't know. There may be some places that you can get some free ones, but you want to make sure you do that. So teach your kid to swim, teach yourself to swim, honestly. Make sure you do some basic life support. Okay. So, kind of like a lot of things, knowledge is power, knowledge is power. So for a powerful and in-depth look at the issue, there's an article from NBC News that was titled "Black Children Drown at a Higher Rate." Here's why and how to change it. So you can search for those words with NBC News and kind of follow up with this as well. So that's tragedies like this happen, and when they do, sometimes it's a wake up call. And I think that this, like I said, I definitely I want to say, my condolences to the family and friends of Brother Malcolm Jamal Warner. Our prayers for his soul and for the comfort of his family members. I mean, I think we want to put that out there. But at the same time, I want to also, we also want to honor that by learning more about what happened and teaching ourselves, our family, and our friends how to prevent it from happening again. And not just his particular incident, but we also want to make sure that other water related incidents we prevent another tragedy from happening in the future. So, one way of honoring, people whenever they pass from incidents like this is to learn and to prevent somebody else from doing it. Okay. So hopefully you learned something today. Hopefully this is useful for you. This kind of wraps up our health facts for today. Thank you for tuning in. Please tune in again next Wednesday at 12:15, where we will have another health fact that we can provide for you. And I always have to put a caveat: I'm a doctor, but I'm not your doctor. So if you have any specific issues or that you want to cover, always call your doctor. But in the meantime, like I said, feel free to reach out to us. You can either send us an email, on the website, PressureMD.com. You can also call the radio station at WVOE. Let us know if there's anything else that you want to do. Let us know what you think about the show. Is it good, bad, or indifferent? So thank you very much for that. I want to thank WVOE for allowing me to host this session, and we will chat with you later on.